Hi, my name is Anne. I'm a consultant at the University of Wyoming Writing Center, and today I want to talk to you guys about the Universal Design for Learning and how we can implement it in our Writing Center consultations. So, UDL, Universal Design for Learning, grew out of the Universal Design movement. This was initially an architectural philosophy that focused on accessibility and ease of use. The application to learning really began through the work of Dr. David Rose. He was an educator who realized that the quote unquote normal methods of teaching didn't work for all learners. All learners had different abilities and different needs, and so this kind of standard set curriculum that had been used wasn't working for everyone. So his work really began in 1984, and he went on to found CAST. So, what is CAST? CAST stands for the Center of Applied Special Technology, and it really sought to answer the question, how can technology help students with learning disabilities? So, they initially started in specialized tech, so that could be things like AAC devices or other computer tech electronic devices that aid in the learning process. Um, UDL work did not really begin until 1988. So UDL is a more philosophical kind of approach to learning rather than the nitty gritty. How is this person learning? It's focused on how do we create learning in a way that is accessible to the broadest range of learners. So, a big core tenet of UDL is that teaching should be proactive, not retroactive. So, rather than following this kind of recipe for how to teach and how to educate students, and then when it doesn't work for students, going back and making that fit, it's focused on how can we make education from the get-go as accessible as possible. So it's about proactively anticipating the needs of learners rather than going back and fixing when their needs are not met. So CAST is the leader in UDL innovation. They're constantly doing research and improving UDL theory. They currently publish the UDL guidelines, which we'll get to later on in this little presentation. And the ultimate goal in UDL is learner agency. These are 6 pieces that CAST uses to define learner agency. They say it should be purposeful, resourceful, strategic, reflective, authentic, and action-oriented. So the UDL guidelines, which we'll take a look at in a second, are broken up into 3 chunks: engagement, representation, and action and expression. Always consider these guidelines when meeting with students. A question I'll ask you to think about with this presentation and as we move on in the training is, how can we anticipate the various needs of Writing Center students? There is no cookie cutter student who comes into the Writing Center, so giving you cookie cutter application is not going to be the most beneficial. You're going to want to think about, how can I make my sessions applicable to these clients? So these are some guidelines that they break down. This is pretty intense, so I'll encourage you all to take a peek at these after and consider them. I'll talk about some ways that I try and work these into my Writing Center consultations. So these get really nitty gritty and, vary and honor the methods for response, navigation, and movement. What does that mean? So let's get to the basics. How I approach all Writing Center consultations is I try and let the student lead the consultation. I try and really focus on this is their time. I want to be a partner with them. I don't want to be their leader. So when clients come into the Writing Center, if they're, you know, the seating in the center is all open, I encourage clients to choose a seat wherever they want. I can move to them. Seating can be really beneficial, the way we sit, the method of seating. So some clients really need that stimulation of moving back and forth in the chairs. So that can be a great option. Other students, the kind of seclusion you get in the booths can be really helpful. So encouraging them to choose where they want to sit. Even more, if you notice a client, if you're working with a client who's having trouble sitting still, having trouble sitting through that, if you have the possibility to get up and walk around, that can be a great option. Sometimes people think better when they're moving. Sometimes people have to pace to really get their ideas out. So I encourage you to be flexible in the way that you approach the session, and remember that there's no cookie cutter way to interact with the students. Furthermore, we have a lot of really helpful resources in the Writing Center. The fidgets are a great tool to use if you have a client who's really fidgety, who's having trouble sitting still, or even a client who's having trouble focusing. Something like having them use those fidgets can be helpful. Additionally, the basement of the library has crazy acoustics. Someone could be across the basement and it sounds like they're sitting right next to you. Personally, for me, I know at times that can get really overstimulating and I have to get up and remove myself from the situation so I can focus. Our clients can be in the exact same boat. This would be a great time to use 121 if that's open. If you need a quiet space away from all that commotion, that can be a great opportunity. Even going up to Book and Bean can be a really great option to, if they need some of that natural light, if they're feeling overwhelmed by the artificial light, moving to that natural light can be a great opportunity. Or again, in 121, turning down those lights dim. So turning them down, making the space more comfortable for clients. Yes, you do still have to get the work done, and sometimes there are accommodations that just aren't possible. However, UDL and incorporating some of these pieces into our consultation means we should find a way to make our consultations as comfortable and accommodating to clients as possible. So I'll wrap up here. I want to give you a quick second to look at this case study quick and think about those UDL guidelines and the way you can apply them. So this case study, Maria, a sophomore majoring in psychology, visited the University Writing Center to seek help with a research paper. Maria has a documented learning disability that affects her reading comprehension and writing fluency. She struggles to organize her thoughts clearly and experiences difficulty with sentence structure and grammar, which makes academic writing a challenge. So you can see she has some difficulty with her writing, but also has difficulty with motivation and comprehension. So a lot of different areas that Maria could use some help in. So take a second right now, pause the video, and I want you to think for a minute about some ways you can help Maria. Okay, so here are some suggested implementation, of the UDL guidelines. You can take a look over those. Also, I highly encourage you guys still to go back, look up these UDL guidelines, and spend some time, if you haven't, looking over them, kind of synthesizing them. What does that mean for you? How do you learn? What are the quote unquote accommodations you make for yourself to be the most successful learner possible? I hope this has been helpful. I hope you've learned a little bit more about UDL, and good luck in your future consultations.